She had exactly 3 rules when she started working at Club Euphoria. Never fall in love, never get pregnant, and never, ever sleep with the clients who owned half of Seoul's underground. Sade broke all 3 in one night with Kang Min-ho, and now his enemies were hunting her. His child was growing inside her, and the most dangerous man in Korea was offering her protection that felt more like possession. Welcome to K Fairy Tale Stories, besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. 3 months earlier, Sade had been a different person. She'd been studying business management at Seoul National University, working part-time at a cafe, dreaming of opening her own restaurant someday. Then her father collapsed during his shift at the factory. Stage 4 lung cancer. The hospital bills came like an avalanche, burying her family in debt they'd never escape. When the loan sharks started showing up at their apartment, when they started making threats about her younger brother and sister, Sade made a choice. She dropped out of university. She sold her textbooks, her laptop, everything of value. It wasn't enough. That's when her roommate mentioned Club Euphoria. High-end, she said. Clean, safe. The kind of place where foreign businessmen and wealthy locals paid thousands for a night with beautiful women. 1 month, her roommate promised. 1 month and you'll have enough for the surgery. Sade told herself it was temporary, told herself it didn't matter what she had to do if it meant her father lived, told herself she could survive anything for her family. The club itself was nothing like she expected. No dark alleys or seedy back rooms. Club Euphoria occupied the top 3 floors of a luxury hotel in Gangnam, all crystal chandeliers and marble floors and women who looked like they belonged on magazine covers. The madam, a sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Choi, had looked Sade up and down with the calculating gaze of someone pricing merchandise. "You're pretty," she'd said. "Exotic. The foreign look works here. Men pay extra for that." Sade had signed the contract without reading it. Desperation made you stupid. Her first 2 weeks, she'd only worked as a hostess, pouring drinks, laughing at unfunny jokes, letting men touch her waist or her knee, but nothing more. She told herself this was manageable, told herself she could do this without crossing certain lines. Then Mrs. Choi called her into the office. "One of our most important clients requested you specifically," she said. "He saw you last week serving his table. He's willing to pay 5 million won for 1 night. Sade's hands had gone cold. "That's enough for the surgery," Mrs. Choi added. "All of it. 1 night and your father lives." That's how Sade found herself standing outside room 7 on a Friday night, wearing a red dress that barely covered her thighs, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She knocked twice. The door opened. And there he was. Kang Min-ho stood in the doorway like he owned not just the room but the entire world. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with the kind of face that made women stop breathing. Sharp jawline, dark eyes that seemed to see straight through her, black hair pushed back from his forehead. He wore a black suit with no tie, the top buttons of his shirt undone. And he looked at her the way a predator looks at prey. "Come in," he said in perfect English. His voice was deep, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't need to be raised to command obedience. Sade stepped inside. The room was enormous, more like a luxury apartment than a hotel room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a king-sized bed with black silk sheets, a sitting area with leather furniture. Min-ho closed the door behind her and she heard the lock click. The sound felt final. "Your name," he said. It wasn't a question. "Sade," she managed. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Min-ho moved to the bar in the corner, poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed her one. She took it with trembling hands. "You're new," he observed. "First night?" She nodded. He studied her for a long moment. And something in his expression shifted. Something that might have been disappointment or maybe curiosity. "Why are you here, Sade?" The question caught her off guard. "Because you paid for me to be here." "That's not what I asked." He moved closer and she caught his scent, expensive cologne mixed with something darker, something that made her pulse quicken. "Why are you really here?" The honest answer slipped out before she could stop it. "My father is dying. I need money for his surgery." Minho's eyes narrowed slightly. "So you sold yourself." "I did what I had to do." "And what if I told you to leave right now? That I'd pay the full amount anyway?" Sade looked at him, confused. "Why would you do that?" "Because," Minho said quietly, "you don't belong here. Everything about you screams that this is wrong, that you're terrified, that you're forcing yourself to be someone you're not." He finished his whiskey in one swallow. "I don't sleep with women who don't want to be here." Relief and something else, something she didn't want to name, flooded through her. "So I can go?" "You can go." He turned away from her, moved to the windows. "The money will be transferred tonight. Tell Mrs. Choi that I was satisfied. Lie if you have to." Sade should have left, should have grabbed this miracle and run. But instead she found herself speaking. "Why? Why would you pay for nothing?" Minho didn't turn around. "Because I know what it's like to do things you hate to protect the people you love. Because mercy is rare in my world, and maybe I need to practice it occasionally. Because looking at you makes me feel something I haven't felt in years, and that terrifies me more than any enemy I've ever faced." The confession hung in the air between them. Sade took a step toward him. "Thank you," she said softly. "Don't thank me," Minho replied. "Just promise me something. Get the surgery for your father. Get out of this place. Go back to whatever life you had before. Forget you ever met me." "Why?" "Because I'm not a good man, Sade, and women who get close to me tend to end up dead." He finally turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "So take the money, save your father, and stay far away from Kang Minho." She left the room in a daze. Mrs. Choi was waiting downstairs with a knowing smile and an envelope thick with cash. "See? Easy money. You'll be a natural at this." But Sade barely heard her. Her mind was still in that room with a man who'd shown her unexpected kindness, a man whose eyes held shadows so deep she wanted to understand them, a man who'd looked at her like she was precious even though he'd paid to use her. She told herself that was the end of it. Told herself she'd never see him again. She was wrong. 2 weeks later, Sade's father had the surgery. The doctor said he had a good chance now, that the treatment was working. Her mother cried with relief. Her siblings hugged her, thanking her for saving their father without knowing how she'd gotten the money. Sade told them she'd gotten a loan from a benevolent employer. The lie tasted bitter, but it was better than the truth. She tried to go back to her normal life. Got a job at a restaurant. Started saving money to return to university eventually. But she couldn't stop thinking about Minho. The way he'd looked at her. The sadness in his voice when he'd warned her away. The feeling that he'd seen something in her worth protecting. She was being stupid, she knew. Romanticizing a transaction. But her traitorous heart didn't care about logic. Then, one night, as she was closing up the restaurant, a black car pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. Minho sat in the back seat, looking exactly as devastatingly beautiful as she remembered. "Get in," he said. It wasn't a request. Sade should have been afraid, should have run. But instead she found herself walking to the car, opening the door, sliding into the leather seat beside him. The driver pulled away from the curb before she could change her mind. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere we can talk," Minho replied. His jaw was tight, tension radiating from him. "I told you to stay away from me." "I did stay away. You're the one who came looking for me." "I know." His hand clenched into a fist on his thigh. "I know, and I should have left you alone. But I can't stop thinking about you." The confession made her heart skip. "I can't stop thinking about you either," she admitted. Minho closed his eyes like he was in pain. "This is a mistake. Then why are you here? Because 2 weeks without seeing you felt like dying. Because I've built an empire on discipline and control, and one night with you destroyed all of it. Because I'm selfish enough to want something good, even though I know I'll ruin it. He opened his eyes, looked at her with an intensity that made her feel naked. Because I want you, Sadie, and I'm not a man who denies himself what he wants. The car stopped outside a luxury high-rise in Gangnam. Min-ho's penthouse occupied the entire top floor. He led her inside without touching her, but she felt the pull between them like gravity. The space was minimalist, all clean lines and expensive furniture and windows overlooking the glittering city. "Can I offer you something to drink?" he asked. His politeness felt like armor. Sage shook her head. "I don't want a drink." "What do you want?" "You," she said simply. "Even though you're dangerous. Even though this is probably the worst decision I'll ever make. I want you." Something in Min-ho's control snapped. He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands framing her face, his forehead dropping to rest against hers. "You don't know what you're asking for. Then show me." His kiss was nothing like she expected. It wasn't aggressive or demanding, it was desperate, almost reverent, like he was drowning and she was air. His hands slid into her hair, tilting her head back, and she melted into him. Every nerve in her body came alive. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "I'm not gentle," he warned. "I don't do relationships. I don't know how to be soft." "I don't care," Sade said. "I just want tonight. Even if that's all we get." Min-ho searched her eyes for something, maybe permission or maybe absolution. Then he kissed her again, deeper this time, his hands sliding down her body with purpose. The world narrowed to just them, just this moment, just the way he made her feel like she was the only thing that mattered. He lifted her easily, carried her to his bedroom, laid her down on sheets that smelled like him. And then he showed her exactly what it felt like to be worshipped by a man who thought he was incapable of worship. The night blurred into sensation, his mouth on her skin, his hands learning every curve, the way he whispered her name like a prayer. Sade had never felt anything like this consuming need, this feeling of being completely wanted. When he finally moved inside her, when they became one in the most intimate way possible, she understood why this was dangerous. Because this wasn't just physical. This was something deeper, something that would leave marks on her soul. Min-ho held her afterward, his fingers tracing patterns on her back, and for a moment she let herself pretend this was real, that he was hers and she was his, and the world outside this room didn't exist. The next morning, Sade woke up alone. Panic seized her until she heard movement in the other room. She found Min-ho in his kitchen, shirtless, making coffee. The morning light painted him gold, highlighting the scars that decorated his torso, evidence of a violent life. He looked up when she entered, and something soft crossed his face before his usual mask slid back into place. "How do you take your coffee?" "Black is fine." He poured her a cup, handed it to her without touching her. Sade wrapped her hands around the warm mug, suddenly feeling awkward. "So what happens now?" Min-ho leaned against the counter, studied her with those dark eyes that saw too much. "Now you go back to your life and I go back to mine. That's it? One night and we pretend this didn't happen? That was the agreement." His voice was carefully neutral. "You said you just wanted tonight." Sade set down her coffee with more force than necessary. "What if I want more than one night?" "You don't. Trust me." Min-ho's jaw tightened. "My world is dangerous, Sade. The men I do business with, the enemies I've made, they'd use you against me in a heartbeat. Getting close to me is a death sentence. What if I'm willing to risk it? You're not. You're young, you have your whole life ahead of you. Go back to school. Open that restaurant you dreamed about. Find some normal guy who'll give you a normal life." His words were harsh, but she heard the pain underneath them. "And what about what you want?" she challenged. "Do you want me to walk away?" "More than anything," he said quietly. Then his control cracked. And less than anything, I want you to be safe, Sade, even if that means being safe from me. But God help me, I also want to keep you here, locked in this penthouse where no one can touch you, where you're mine and only mine. The raw honesty of it stole her breath. Then keep me. Don't be stupid. Don't be a coward. The words came out sharper than she intended. You said you always take what you want, so take me. Stop pushing me away because you're afraid. I'm not afraid. Yes, you are. You're terrified that caring about me makes you vulnerable, that letting me in gives your enemies ammunition. But maybe, she stepped closer to him, maybe I'm worth the risk. Maybe we both are. Minho stared at her like she was something impossible, something miraculous. Then he pulled her against him, kissed her hard and deep and possessive. Stay, he murmured against her lips. Stay with me. Just for today. I'll stay, she promised. That day turned into a week. Sade told her family she got a live-in position at a restaurant. The lie came easier this time. She moved into Minho's penthouse, and they existed in a bubble where the outside world didn't intrude. He was different when they were alone. Still intense, still commanding, but there was a gentleness to him that she suspected few people ever saw. He cooked for her, taught her Korean curse words, fell asleep with his head in her lap while she played with his hair. And at night he showed her pleasures she'd never imagined, mapped her body like territory he was claiming. Whispered possessive promises in Korean that she didn't understand but felt in her bones. But the bubble couldn't last forever. Minho had a business empire to run, and that business was built on violence and blood. He tried to keep that part of his life separate from her, but Sade wasn't stupid. She saw the late-night phone calls, the tension in his shoulders, the way his men looked at her with barely concealed concern. She saw the guns hidden throughout the penthouse, the security cameras, the bodyguards who now followed her whenever she left the building. She was living with a criminal, and pretending otherwise was naive. The reality crashed down on her one evening when Minho came home covered in blood. Sade was in the living room reading when she heard the door open. She looked up and froze. Minho stood in the entryway, his white shirt soaked red, his knuckles split and bloody, his eyes empty in a way that terrified her. "Oh my God," she breathed, rushing to him. "Are you hurt?" "It's not my blood," he said flatly. "Then whose blood is it?" "Someone who tried to hurt what's mine." He looked at her and she saw fury in his eyes, barely controlled violence simmering beneath the surface. "Someone who made the mistake of mentioning your name in a way I didn't appreciate." The implication sank in. "You killed someone because of me." "I removed a threat. That's my job." His voice was cold, detached, nothing like the man who'd held her so gently the night before. "This is who I am, Sade. This is what I do. I protect what's mine by eliminating anyone who threatens it. If that disgusts you, if you can't handle it, then leave now before this goes any further." Sade should have been horrified, should have run from this man who just admitted to murder. But instead she found herself stepping closer, reaching for his blood-stained hands. "I'm not leaving." "Why not?" "Because I know you did it to protect me. Because I see the monster you have to be to survive your world, but I also see the man underneath. Because I love you, Minho, even though I'm probably insane for it." The confession hung between them. Minho's control finally shattered. He pulled her against him, buried his face in her neck, held her so tight she could barely breathe. "Say it again," he demanded hoarsely. "I love you, and I'm not leaving, and you can't scare me away." Minho kissed her then, desperate and claiming, lifting her easily, carrying her to the bedroom. He made love to her, still wearing his blood-soaked clothes, marked her skin with possessive kisses, whispered Korean words she was starting to understand. "Mine," he said over and over. "You're mine, Sade. Only mine. Always mine." And she surrendered to it, to him, to this dangerous love that should have terrified her, but instead made her feel more alive than she'd ever been. After, as they lay tangled together, Minho spoke into the darkness. "I'll marry you." Sade's heart stopped. "What?" "Marry me. Make this official. Let everyone know that you're under my protection, that touching you means war." His hand splayed possessively across her stomach. "I want the world to know you're mine. That's not a proposal. That's a declaration. That's all I know how to give you. I'm not a man who gets down on one knee and makes romantic speeches. I'm a man who takes what he wants and destroys anyone who tries to take it from him. So I'm telling you, Sade, you're going to be my wife." The presumption of it should have made her angry. Instead, she found herself laughing. "You're insane. Completely and totally insane." "Is that a yes?" She rolled to face him, traced the sharp line of his jaw. "Ask me properly, and maybe I'll consider it." Minho's eyes softened just slightly. "Sade, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life protecting you, providing for you, worshipping you? Will you give me the right to call you mine in front of God and everyone else? Will you trust me with your heart, even though I'm the most dangerous man you'll ever meet?" "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Minho kissed her then, deep and slow and full of promises neither of them knew if he could keep. But in that moment, wrapped in his arms, feeling safer than she'd ever felt, despite knowing exactly what kind of man he was, Sade chose to believe in impossible things, chose to believe that love could exist even in darkness, chose to believe that she and Minho could build something beautiful from blood and violence and desperate need. She was wrong about a lot of things, but she was right about one. She was his, completely and utterly his, and he was hers, and that belonging would be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. They were married 3 days later in a private ceremony that felt more like a business transaction than a wedding. Minho's lawyer officiated. 2 of his most trusted men served as witnesses, and the entire thing took less than 15 minutes. Sade wore a simple white dress Minho had bought for her. He wore his usual black suit, and when he slipped the ring onto her finger, a platinum band with diamonds that probably cost more than her family's house, she felt the weight of what she'd just done. She was married to a crime lord. She was Mrs. Kang Minho. She belonged to the most dangerous man in Seoul. And despite everything, despite the insanity of it all, she'd never been happier. Minho seemed different after the ceremony, more possessive, more attentive, like the ring on her finger had given him permission to claim her completely. He started bringing her to business dinners, introducing her as his wife with a pride that made her chest tight. He bought her clothes, jewelry, things she'd never dreamed of owning. He hired bodyguards to follow her everywhere, installed security systems in every room, made it clear to his entire organization that she was untouchable. And at night, he worshipped her body like it was sacred, made love to her with an intensity that left her breathless and aching and completely his. For 2 weeks, Sade lived in a dream. Then reality came crashing back. She'd been feeling off for a few days, nauseous in the mornings, exhausted by midday, her breasts tender in a way that made her uncomfortable. At first, she blamed it on stress, on adjusting to this new life. Then she missed her period. Panic set in immediately. She bought 3 pregnancy tests from 3 different pharmacies, took them all in the bathroom of Minho's penthouse while he was at a meeting. All 3 came back positive. Sade stared at those 2 pink lines and felt her world tilt. She was pregnant, with Minho's child, a child conceived in violence and passion and desperate need. A child that would tie her to him forever, that would make her a permanent target for his enemies, that would change everything. She was sitting on the bathroom floor, surrounded by positive tests, when Minho came home. He found her there 20 minutes later, tears streaming down her face. "Sade?" His voice was sharp with concern. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" She couldn't speak, just held up one of the tests with a shaking hand. Minho went very still. He took the test from her, studied it for a long moment, then looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. "You're pregnant," she nodded. With my child. Another nod. Minho set down the test carefully, then dropped to his knees in front of her. His hands framed her face, thumbs wiping away her tears. Why are you crying? Is this not what you want? I don't know, she admitted. I'm terrified. Of what? Of everything. Of bringing a child into your world, of making them a target, of being a terrible mother, of you not wanting this. Minho's eyes softened in a way she'd never seen before. Sade, listen to me. I want this. I want you, and I want our child, and I will burn down the entire city before I let anyone hurt either of you. You're going to be an incredible mother, and our child will be the most protected person in Korea. He pressed his forehead to hers. This is a gift, not a curse. Do you understand? She wanted to believe him, wanted to surrender to the certainty in his voice, but fear was a living thing inside her chest. The next few weeks passed in a blur of doctor's appointments and security upgrades, and Minho's increasingly possessive behavior. He barely let her out of his sight, canceled meetings to go with her to checkups, hired a private physician to monitor her health, started planning for a nursery before she was even 3 months along. And while part of Sade appreciated his devotion, another part felt suffocated. She'd gone from being invisible to being the center of someone's entire world, and she didn't know how to handle that kind of intensity. Then things got complicated. Minho had a rival, a man named Choi Jae-sung, who controlled the Eastern District and had been trying to expand into Minho's territory for years. Until now, they'd maintained an uneasy truce. But when word got out that Minho had married, that his new wife was pregnant, Jae-sung saw an opportunity. The first threat came in the form of a gift, a bouquet of black roses delivered to the penthouse with a card that read, "Congratulations on the baby. I hope nothing happens to it." Minho's rage when he saw it was terrifying. He immediately doubled her security, moved her to a safe house, refused to let her leave without an armed escort. Sade felt like a prisoner again, trapped in luxury but trapped nonetheless. The second threat was more direct. One of Minho's men was killed, his body left in a parking garage with a message carved into his chest. The wife, the baby, they're mine. Minho came home that night looking like death itself. His eyes were empty, his jaw tight, violence radiating from him like heat. "We're ending this," he said. "Tonight." "What are you going to do?" Sade asked, though she already knew. "What I should have done years ago." He checked his gun, slid it into his shoulder holster. "Jae-sung has been a problem for too long. He thinks he can threaten you, threaten our child, and live. He's wrong. Minho, please." She grabbed his arm. "Don't do this. Don't go to war because of me. This isn't because of you." His voice was cold. "This is because he crossed a line. Because he threatened what's mine. Because I'm sending a message to everyone in this city that my family is untouchable." He cupped her face, kissed her hard. "Stay here. Don't leave this apartment. I'll be back before morning." Then he was gone, leaving Sade alone with her fear and the baby growing inside her. She didn't sleep, couldn't sleep. Paced the apartment for hours, jumping at every sound, imagining the worst. Minho dead. Minho arrested. Minho becoming the monster she'd been trying to pretend he wasn't. When he finally came home at 4 in the morning, he was covered in blood again. But this time there was something different in his eyes. Satisfaction. Finality. "It's done," he said simply. "Jae-sung won't be a problem anymore. You killed him. I eliminated a threat to my family. There's a difference." Minho stripped off his bloody clothes, headed for the shower. "Are you coming?" Sade should have been horrified, should have demanded answers. Should have confronted him about the violence, the murder, the casual way he talked about ending lives. But instead she found herself following him into the shower, washing the blood from his skin, letting him hold her under the hot water. "I did this for you," he murmured against her hair. "For our child. So you'd be safe." "I know," she whispered. And I hate that I understand, that I'm not running. That part of me is grateful. That's because you love me. His hands slid over her wet skin. Because you know I'd do anything to protect you. Because you're mine, Sade, and mine means I fight for you. I kill for you. I burn the world down for you if that's what it takes. She turned in his arms, looked up at him. I'm scared of how much I love you. I'm scared of what I've become, what you've turned me into. I haven't turned you into anything. He kissed her softly. I've just shown you what you're capable of when you love someone enough to accept their darkness. And you love me, don't you? Even with the blood on my hands, even knowing what I've done. You love me anyway. Yes, she admitted. God help me, yes. Then that's all that matters. Minho lifted her easily, carried her to bed despite her protests that she was too heavy now. They made love slowly, tenderly, and afterward he held her and their unborn child and promised things he had no right to promise. That they'd be happy, that they'd be safe, that love was enough. For 3 months they were. Sade's pregnancy progressed normally. The baby, a girl, grew strong and healthy. Minho transformed one of the spare rooms into a nursery, all soft pinks and whites and stuffed animals. He read parenting books, went to every appointment, talked to Sade's stomach like the baby could already hear him. And slowly, Sade started to believe that maybe they could have this. Maybe they could build a family in the middle of chaos. Maybe love was enough. Then everything fell apart. It started with a phone call. One of Minho's men, someone he'd trusted for years, had been feeding information to a rival organization. They knew about Sade. They knew about the baby, and they were planning something. Minho went into crisis mode immediately, moved them to a different safe house, changed all their security protocols, started sleeping with a gun under his pillow. The tension was suffocating. Sade could feel it in the way he touched her, like he was afraid she'd disappear. In the way he watched her constantly, like enemies might materialize from shadows. In the way he held her at night, possessive and desperate and scared, in a way he'd never admit. I won't let anything happen to you, he promised over and over. I'll die before I let them touch you. That's what I'm afraid of, Sade admitted one night. That you'll get yourself killed trying to protect me. That our daughter will grow up without a father because you were too busy being a hero. I'm not a hero. Minho's voice was rough. I'm a monster trying to protect the only good things in his life. There's a difference. Then stop being a monster. She grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. Stop going to war. Stop killing people. Walk away from this life before it destroys us. I can't. Why not? Because this is who I am. Because without this empire, without this power, I can't protect you. Because men like me don't get to walk away, Sade. We die in this life, or we die trying to leave it. His eyes were anguished. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I brought you into this. But I can't let you go. I won't. The attack came 2 days later. Sade was in the safe house with 2 bodyguards when she heard the gunshots. Loud, rapid, close. The guards immediately moved to protect her, pushing her into the panic room Minho had installed. Stay here, one of them ordered. Don't come out until Mr. Kang arrives. But Sade heard the screams, heard the sound of bodies hitting the floor, heard footsteps getting closer. The panic room door was reinforced steel, supposedly impenetrable, but she knew if they really wanted to get to her, they would. She pressed her hands to her stomach, to the baby moving inside her, and prayed to a god she wasn't sure existed anymore. Please, please let us survive this. Please let Minho get here in time. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Then a voice, cold and amused. Mrs. Kang, we know you're in there. You can come out peacefully, or we can blow the door and drag you out. Either way, you're coming with us. Terror flooded through her. Over my dead body, she called back, trying to sound braver than she felt. That can be arranged. We were told to bring you alive if possible. But if necessary, we'll settle for just the baby. You see, your husband made some powerful enemies, and they want to send him a message. What better message than his wife and child's bodies delivered to his doorstep? Sade heard the sound of explosives being placed on the door. She had maybe 2 minutes before they breached. Her phone buzzed. Minho. I'm 5 minutes away, his text read. Hold on. I'm coming. But 5 minutes might as well be forever. The explosion rocked the room. Smoke filled the air. Hands grabbed her, pulling her out of the panic room. Sade fought, kicked, screamed, but there were too many of them. 4 men, maybe 5, all armed. They dragged her toward the door. Then gunfire erupted again. But this time it was different, organized, precise. Minho's men. She heard his voice, cold and deadly. Let her go. Now, or I start executing everyone in this building. The men hesitated. Their leader, a scarred man with dead eyes, pressed a gun to Sade's temple. You shoot, she dies. Minho appeared in the doorway. His gun was pointed directly at the leader's head, and his eyes were emptier than Sade had ever seen them. You hurt her, he said quietly, and I'll make sure you spend days dying. I'll cut pieces off you slowly. I'll make you beg for death and deny it until you've screamed yourself raw. I'll destroy everyone you've ever loved while you watch. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to put the gun down. You're going to step away from my wife. And maybe I'll let you live long enough to regret ever touching what's mine. The leader hesitated. In that split second of indecision, Minho moved. The shot was perfect. The leader dropped dead before he hit the ground. Chaos erupted. Minho's men swarmed the room, taking down the remaining attackers with brutal efficiency. And through it all, Minho moved towards Sade like nothing else existed. He caught her as her knees gave out, held her against his chest, his hands frantically checking her for injuries. Are you hurt? Did they touch you? Is the baby okay? I'm fine, she managed. We're both fine. Thank God. His voice broke. Thank God. He buried his face in her hair, and she felt him shaking. I thought I'd lost you. I thought I'd be too late. They went to the hospital immediately. The doctor confirmed what Sade already knew. The baby was fine. Strong heartbeat, normal movement, no complications despite the trauma. But Sade couldn't stop shaking, couldn't stop seeing those men's faces, couldn't stop hearing the threat that they'd take her baby. Minho sat beside her hospital bed, holding her hand, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked defeated. This is my fault, he said quietly. All of it. I brought you into my world knowing how dangerous it was. I got you pregnant knowing you'd be a target. I've been selfish and stupid, and I've nearly gotten you killed twice now. His grip tightened. I can't do this anymore, Sade. I can't keep risking you. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm walking away. From the organization, from the empire, from all of it. Her heart stopped. Minho, you can't. You said yourself that men like you don't get to walk away. Then I'll be the first. His eyes were fierce. I'll dismantle everything I've built. I'll hand power to someone else. I'll take you and our daughter somewhere safe, somewhere far from Seoul, somewhere my enemies can't find us. I'll give up everything if it means you're safe. But what about your men? Your responsibilities? They'll understand. And if they don't, that's not my problem anymore. His hand moved to her stomach. You and this baby are my priority now. Nothing else matters. Sade saw the determination in his face and knew he meant it. This man who'd built an empire on blood and fear was willing to walk away from it all for her, for their family. The magnitude of that sacrifice made her chest tight. I love you, she whispered. I love you so much it terrifies me. I love you more. Minho leaned forward, pressed his forehead to hers. You and our daughter are my entire world. I'll spend the rest of my life proving that. The transition took 2 months. Minho carefully dismantled his organization, distributing territory and resources to trusted lieutenants, making sure everyone understood that he was out. Some people accepted it. Others didn't. There were threats, attempts at retaliation, moments where Sade thought they wouldn't make it. But Minho was methodical, ruthless in his extraction from the criminal world he'd spent years building. By the time Sade was 8 months pregnant, they were ready to leave Seoul. Minho had bought a house in Jeju Island, far from the city, isolated and secure. They would start over there. He'd already set up a legitimate business, a security consulting firm that would give them income without the criminal element. It wasn't the empire he'd commanded, but it was honest work. It was a future their daughter could be proud of. The night before they left Seoul, Minho took Sade to the penthouse one last time. They stood at the windows overlooking the city, his arms wrapped around her from behind, his hands resting on her swollen belly. "Any regrets?" she asked, "about giving all this up?" "None." His voice was absolute. "I'd give up 1,000 empires for you. For her." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You're my empire now, Sade. You and our daughter. Everything else was just preparation for finding you." She leaned back against him, let herself believe in impossible things, in redemption, in second chances. In love being enough to overcome even the darkest past. They moved to Jeju the next day. The house was beautiful, modern but warm, with a garden and a view of the ocean. Minho had already set up the nursery, had already made sure every security measure was in place. And for the first time in months, Sade felt like she could breathe. Like maybe they'd actually escaped. Like maybe they got their happy ending after all. Their daughter was born on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks later. Labor was long and difficult, but Minho never left her side. He held her hand, coached her breathing, told her she was strong and brave and perfect. And when the doctor finally placed their baby girl in Sade's arms, when she looked down at that tiny, perfect face, she understood why people said love changes everything. Because it did. This little girl, this perfect combination of her and Minho, was worth every moment of terror and pain and sacrifice. Minho looked at his daughter with tears streaming down his face. "What should we name her?" he asked. Sade thought for a moment. "Hope. Her name is Hope, because that's what she represents. Hope for a better future. Hope that we can be more than our past. Hope that love really can conquer everything." Minho kissed Sade's forehead, then gently touched Hope's tiny hand. "Hope it is. Perfect." He looked at both of them with such overwhelming love that Sade's heart ached. "My girls, my beautiful girls, I promise you both, I'll spend the rest of my life being worthy of this. Being the man you deserve, being the father she needs." "You already are," Sade said softly. "The monster is gone, Minho. This is who you really are. A man who loves his family enough to give up everything for them. That's not weakness. That's strength." He smiled then, really smiled, and Sade saw the boy he must have been before. Life hardened him into something dangerous. "I love you," he said. "Both of you. More than I thought I was capable of loving anything." The first few months were an adjustment. Minho wasn't used to the mundane tasks of fatherhood, changing diapers and warming bottles, and functioning on 3 hours of sleep. But he approached it with the same intensity he'd brought to everything else in his life. He was methodical about feedings, obsessive about Hope's health, gentle in a way that made Sade fall in love with him all over again. Watching him rock their daughter to sleep, singing softly in Korean, was better than anything his empire had ever given them. They built a life on Jeju that was quiet and normal and beautiful. Minho's security firm did well enough to keep them comfortable. Sade started taking online classes again, working toward finishing her degree. And Hope grew, healthy and happy and loved beyond measure. 6 months after they'd left Seoul, Sade woke up to find Minho standing by Hope's crib, just watching their daughter sleep. She joined him, slipped her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How close I came to losing this. How many times I almost destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too proud or too scared or too stupid to choose differently. He looked at her. I don't deserve this, Sade. This peace, this family, this happiness. Maybe not, she agreed, but you're getting it anyway, because sometimes love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing, and I choose you, every day, in every version of this life. I choose you. Minho pulled her close, kissed her deeply. Marry me again, he said. What? We're already married. I know, but the first time was just paperwork and witnesses and survival. I want to do it right this time. I want to stand in front of people who matter and promise you forever. I want Hope to see her parents choose each other. I want to prove that we're more than just a transaction that turned into love. We're a family, and families deserve beautiful beginnings. Sade laughed through sudden tears. You're ridiculous. Is that a yes? Yes. Yes, it's a yes. I'll marry you again. I'll marry you 100 times if that's what you want. They renewed their vows on the beach 6 months later, with Hope in Sade's arms, and the ocean as their witness. Minho wore white for the first time in his life, and Sade wore a dress the color of sunset. His vows were simple but devastating. I was a monster until you, he said. I was darkness until you brought light. I was lost until you gave me a reason to be found. You saved me, Sade. You and Hope saved me. And I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful for that. For you. For this. For us. Sade's vows were just as raw. You scared me at first, she admitted. Your power, your violence, your intensity. But underneath all that, I saw a man who was desperate to be seen, to be known, to be loved for who he really was, not what he'd become. So I'm promising you now in front of the ocean and the sky and our daughter. I see you, I know you, and I love every part of you. The monster and the man, the darkness and the light, all of it. When they kissed, sealing promises they'd already kept 1,000 times over, Hope giggled in her mother's arms, as if she understood that this moment mattered, that this was what love looked like when it survived everything trying to destroy it, that her parents had fought through hell to give her a world where love was possible. That night, after Hope was asleep, Minho and Sade lay in bed talking about the future, about maybe having another baby, about Sade's restaurant dreams finally becoming reality, about teaching Hope to be strong and kind and brave, about all the ordinary miracles that made up a life well lived. I never thought I'd have this, Minho admitted in the darkness. A family, peace, a reason to wake up that wasn't about survival or power or revenge. You've given me everything, Sade, everything I didn't know I needed. You gave me yourself first, she reminded him. Your trust, your heart, your willingness to change. I just loved you through it. That's not nothing. He pulled her closer. I'm going to love you until the day I die. And even then I'll find a way to love you in whatever comes after. That's not romantic. That's obsessive. He grinned in the darkness. I'm a reformed crime lord. Obsessive is kind of my thing. Fair point, she laughed. Years passed. Hope grew into a bright, fearless little girl who had her father's intensity and her mother's warmth. Minho's security firm expanded, became legitimate and successful. Sadie opened her restaurant, a small place that served fusion food and became beloved in their community. They had another baby, a boy they named Jin, who was just as perfect as his sister. And through it all, through the mundane chaos of family life, Minho and Sade held on to each other, held on to the love that had saved them both, held on to the promise that no matter how dark their beginning had been, their ending would be full of light. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Minho took Sade back to Seoul, just for a day, just to show her how far they'd come. They stood outside Club Euphoria, closed now and converted into something else, and remembered the night that changed everything. I broke all my rules for you, Sade said softly. Never fall in love. never get pregnant, never sleep with dangerous men. I'm glad you did. Minho wrapped his arms around her. Because I broke all mine for you too. Never care about anyone more than power. Never let anyone see weakness. Never believe in things like love or redemption or second chances. He kissed her temple. You made me believe in impossible things, Sade. You made me believe I could be more than my worst choices. You are more, she insisted. You're a husband, a father, a good man who made bad choices and then made better ones. That's all any of us can do. Choose better, love harder, fight for the people we care about. And you did that. You gave up everything for us. I'd do it again, he said, 1,000 times, in every lifetime. I'd choose you. I'd choose our family. I'd choose this beautiful, messy, impossible love. Always. They went home to Jeju that night, to their children sleeping peacefully, to the life they'd built from blood and fear and desperate need. And as Minho held his family close, as he watched his wife and children sleep, he understood something profound. Redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a future worth living for, and he'd built something beautiful, something that mattered. Something that proved love really could conquer everything, even the darkest beginning. Sade had broken all her rules the night she met Kang Minho, and in return she'd gotten everything she never knew she needed. A love that survived impossible odds, a family that chose each other daily, a life that proved sometimes the most dangerous choice is the one that saves you. She'd been terrified when she knocked on that door in Club Euphoria. She'd been desperate and broken and sure she was selling away pieces of herself she'd never get back. But instead she'd found a man who saw her worth when she couldn't see it herself, who fought for her when she didn't know how to fight, who loved her with an intensity that rewrote both their stories. And their daughter Hope, sleeping peacefully in the next room, was living proof that even the darkest nights eventually give way to dawn. That love born in shadows can still grow in light. That redemption is always possible for those brave enough to reach for it. This was their story. Monster and savior, transaction and transformation. 3 broken rules that led to one perfect family. And as Minho pressed a kiss to Sadie's forehead, as he held his entire world in his arms, he knew with absolute certainty that he'd make the same choices again. Break the same rules, fight the same wars. Because some loves are worth everything, some people are worth becoming better for. And Sade, his beautiful brave wife who'd seen the monster and loved the man underneath, was worth every sacrifice. She was his redemption, his salvation, his everything. And he would spend the rest of his life proving worthy of the gift she'd given him. The gift of love, the gift of family, the gift of second chances. This was their happy ending. Hard-won and blood-bought and absolutely perfect.